Good day, everybody, and welcome to our very special Christmas edition of Access Granted, the official podcast of ZK Tech South Africa. Today I've got a very special guest here, Mr. Thomas Mathieu. He's the director of Network, or the managing director of Network. We've been having a long relationship already, but welcome to you.
Yeah, thank you, Hendrik.
Awesome. Yeah, we always kick off the podcast with where you started. Where were you born, school, that type of thing?
Born in Newcastle.
Newcastle in
Yeah,
KwaZulu-Natal.
in Natal. Yeah, I was actually born 6 weeks early.
Okay.
So
So you're 6 weeks older now than you're supposed to be.
Yeah. We were actually, my parents were on the way to holiday in Durban.
Okay.
And I made my acquaintance a bit early, 6 weeks, and I stuffed the holiday around a bit.
Why not?
Yeah.
So it was a grand entrance.
Grand entrance 6 weeks early, so I'm always the early bird still to today.
Okay.
Getting up early in the mornings. That's my way out. Yeah.
And then you then stayed in Newcastle, went there for school, or how did that look?
We actually stayed in Bethel recently.
Okay, yeah.
My dad was in construction, so we traveled around a lot. From Cape Town, Bellville, Cape Town. I was in about 12 schools throughout my school.
12 schools.
12 different schools, yeah. Then ended up in Sasolburg when I went to high school, up to grade 8, and then we actually moved to Vereniging. And I finished high school.
At least not that far.
Not far, just on the other side of the river.
Yes.
I finished high school in Sasolburg at RTS, and then I started an apprenticeship.
Okay.
I actually a qualified artisan from trade, a qualified boilermaker.
Boilermaker.
Yeah, actually.
Okay.
And I still enjoy welding irons and grinding and bending stuff, and teaching the kids how to do it. That's
Of course, yeah.
But now more when I'm home and I want got free time, I do that.
Yes.
In between the sports and the kids.
So you can make your own braais.
I've built a couple of braais. I've built trailers, I've built frames and doors and anything you can call it. Anything my wife wants, I build. She talks, I do.
Yeah, I think that is probably one thing that I'm missing from my education was anything to do with metal. I was more into wood and that type of thing, but metal is one thing that I've always regretted never doing. I'm not old enough to say I can't teach myself that because there's so much videos on the internet these days. But I think it's a nice skill to have, definitely.
Yeah, and I also like woodworking, so I do a lot of stuff. Anything that I can make, I will definitely do. And I love tools. Tools is my hobby. It's like my fishing rod.
Yes.
Can't have enough tools.
And always the newest.
Yeah, always the newest. And these days, with the internet being so open, you can order anything, any tool you want. If I see a special tool, I'll order it.
Yeah. Tell me then from your artisan side, going into more a professional type of thing, what did you do after that?
I worked for a year as an artisan or apprentice, and then went through army, went to ended up at Forsyth in Uppington, July intake in the winter.
Oof.
And then after basic, we ended up in Ladysmith, where I finished my army. And then I went back, did another 2 years, then got my qualification. And then started working at Dolben Engineering, or Vicor, old Vicor works at that time.
Okay, yes.
And I worked permanently night shift, and in the day I study. And
Permanent night shift.
permanent night shift, worked from 2 o'clock to 10 o'clock for 3 years. I completed the National Diploma in 6 Diploma, Mechanical Engineering. And then I went on to day shift, and then a guy by the name of Dawie Reyes, and he's still my mentor up to today. I still know Dawie very well. He was part of my way in the business world, in the corporate world.
Yes.
Then they moved me from the physical tools, ended up in the planning where I did all the planning for the manufacturing side, all the dragline bases and stuff like that. That was called Dobbel Vereniging Works at that stage. And then Dawie moved from the financial manager at Vereniging branch, he moved to head office.
Okay.
and he moved me with him.
Yes.
And I ended up there, and then we went into ERP systems. I was actually an ERP consultant for many, many years. And then when Davy moved on, he became the general manager of IT. And then I ended up getting the IT side, which then for all the ERP systems fall under me. Then ended with the payroll solution at that time, supporting payroll, all the ERP. And that's actually where I was introduced to time and attendance.
Yes. It was a normal progression for you from IT and then into the ERP and that type of thing.
Yeah, it was actually when I was on the floor, I actually used the time and attendance, which Doorbell have written internally at that stage.
Yes.
With a guy with Piet van Amron. I think you know Piet.
I know Piet, yes.
Piet was the regional developer of that solution.
Okay.
Then. It was all DOS-based. You had cards and you had a barcode reader.
Yes.
I still have some of those readers. You must come and watch them in my office.
Yeah.
And then about 1996, I was introduced to the time and attendance. When they decided, no, it was time that we rewrite this.
Yes.
The year 2000 back.
Into a bit more Windows version, eh?
Yeah, and then we actually wrote it in VB6.
Oh, VB, yes.
And then the year 2000 came and nothing happened. We were still in 1999 December. Nobody was supposed to have leave. Everybody worked. And the year 2000 came and nothing happened.
Yeah.
And then at that stage, it was only written for one specific business unit. Was Vereniging Works. And then in 2005, they said they want to actually take the application and make it available for all the other Doorbell engineering environments. And then we've actually written it onto a web browser platform.
Okay.
It was the first web version of the software.
That is web browser version, but it was still local based.
Still local based software. Okay. And roundabout, I did my MBA in, I think it was 2009, 2010.
Goodness, okay.
I did an MBA through Pukka, and then ended up being the head of IT for Doorbell Group. And then it was about 2014, Doorbell decided, no, we're going to now sell off the business units. And then they retrenched everybody that from part of support services. We were part of support services, supporting all the entities. So we all got retrenched.
And that is where you had to make a decision on what's next in your life. But before you get there, I've got the army. Going back to your army days, was there a significant change in your life because you were in the army?
Oh, definitely.
Because I mean, I think I was not fortunate enough to be able to. I could go to the army. Anybody can, but I mean, it was already out of the window for us. You have to go for a year or 2 years. So I didn't go, and there's a lot of my friends and a lot of people that I go. We don't know what it was. I mean, was it a significant change in your life, the army days?
Definitely. One, I was fit as hell when I got to the army.
Yes.
I was weighed like 67 kilograms. Could run a marathon. And then the army taught me a couple of things. One was drinking.
Yes, that comes up a lot.
But I think friendship, camaraderie, you know, and self-discipline. I think, and that's what we see in a lot of youngsters these days is self-discipline. You can't make your own bed. You can't look after yourself. That's things in the army you learn. You have to learn it fast. Iron. I can still iron today. I don't do, but I can still.
If you have to, you can. Yeah.
If you travel a lot and you open a suitcase and everything is wrinkled, I tell them, bring me iron.
Yes.
I will iron the shirt and pants. I don't.
Of course.
So I think out of that, the self-discipline and self-worth, and working together with your team, with your platoon. If you didn't work with your platoon, you battled.
So it's all teamwork from there on.
Yeah.
And then the MBA side, that is obviously also a lot of self-discipline.
Yeah, that was a lot of work.
Yes.
And I built a house during that same period of time, and I had a baby boy, another boy.
Oh, goodness.
So
you took on a lot.
I took on a lot. I was tired after that. But it is not something that's difficult. MBA, everybody say it is difficult. It is, you practically do what you've been taught in business.
Yes.
And they teach you the tools to actually do it more effectively.
Yes.
It is just a lot of work, and I always use an example as how do you eat a cake as big as a table? You can't,
Yeah.
can't swallow it once. You take a spoon and you take bites out of it, small bites. And by doing small bites, you eventually get to it. So,
and that is 2 years, right?
3 years. Yeah, 3 years. And I actually was quite fortunate. I actually did it with another 2 colleagues of mine at that time through Doorbell. And then you meet a lot of a lot of interesting fellows from guys who worked for Cape Gate to Absa Bank, who was one of Absa Bank's guys with us as well. And that was good experience because we were a nice mix. I was strong on IT, somebody else was strong on marketing, we got finance. So we were quite a nice balanced group when we did the MBA. And that, I think that's what actually also make it, think back to the army days, more or less the same environment, you all suffer as a team. Yeah. And at the end you write your own exam, but all the teamwork and the tasks and all of that.
Tell me, also from the MBA side, if you think about how you did business from there on and how you're doing business today, do you think some of that still applies from your MBA days?
Definitely. I've got all the textbooks. If you now show the guys all the textbooks, you can go back. But these days with ChatGPT and all of those things at your fingertips, is much easier.
Exactly, yeah.
But yeah, all of those books I still have, and there's still some of it that I use in business today.
Of course, yeah.
Not all of it, because it's like my middle son always says, what is school learning? He actually wants to go and work. He wants to go and do things. But I said, you have to learn Afrikaans. Otherwise, you can't communicate. You have to do English.
Of course.
Have to do maths. Exactly the same.
It's basic skills. It's basic skills.
They give you the basic skills and know-how of doing it. And then, that time when you did, my final dissertation was still a book that I've written. You had to go to the library to get books. It wasn't you couldn't search it quickly. And then you have to write your own book with references out of this book to that. So that was interesting.
Good experience to have.
Definitely.
Because where the army teaches you the basic skills to work with each other and respecting each other. That is the MBA is actually taking you back to that. And actually then giving you the basic skills. Everybody thinks, yes, it is high level, but I mean, it is still basic skills that they teach you just to do it more efficient.
Yeah, and as you said, I'm still practicing some of what I've learned during that process today.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Then we get to, you were then retrenched, and then you had to make a decision on which direction. How did you get to that decision?
It was not an easy decision. I think if anybody gets retrenched, it's not a nice feeling to have. Yes. Now, where do you get work? I had a good skill set at that point of time.
Yep.
And then Doorbell actually said, we have a problem now because they're selling off the business unit, and you can't sell a business unit without their systems. So how do they support it? And they don't want to support a business unit through Doorbell Engineer if it doesn't belong to them, because then it's a conflict of interest.
Exactly.
And then we said, okay, but we will do it. You've retrenched us. Why don't we create a company? We take over all IT we supply. Okay. We supply a service to all of those companies.
Yes.
And that's actually where we started originally from. The naming of the company at that stage was, the solution was at that stage called the TNA for Doorbell. It was called T-Rec.
Yes.
With a little T-Rex on the
okay. Top. Is that where the name comes from?
That was the name come from.
Okay.
T-Rex. And then we said, okay, but we're doing IT. It's still part of our core business. And then we said, okay, let's call it networking and time recording. And that's where Netrec started from.
Okay.
Netrec actually stands for...
That's where the name...
Networking and time recording. Okay. That's where Netrec was born.
Yes.
At that stage.
Okay. And then that was obviously then with some of your colleagues that you were retrenched with, that you started that business.
We were 6 employees that started it. Good, strong on IT and networking side. And that was in 2015 when we started the company.
Okay.
But we started with a good backing, in the essence of we had good IT, strong contracts.
Yes.
And we still have some of those. I still have a whole IT department that looks after those clients. And we're also getting new business through it.
Yes.
But that's a separate leg to where the time and attendance comes from. When we started with Netrec, the time and attendance were purely made for manufacturing.
Yes.
And it was specifically coded for the Doorbell environment. And that was a big challenge. luckily we had the skill set when we
Yes.
came over. We had at that stage 2 programmers we started with which one is still a shareholder, Armand, you know Armand. So currently we only are 3 shareholders, myself, Andy and Armand.
Yes.
And we've been quite fortunate that we started off with time and attendance
Yes.
and job and activity management. Those are only 2 modules we had at that stage. And then now to take that thing and make it market related,
Of course, yes.
that was a challenge.
Yeah, like I always say, that this looks like the natural progression of this type of company is starting with the time attendance and then a bit of job costing, but then it actually evolves into workforce management. It will actually encompass and then everything what an employee is supposed to be controlled on. And I think if you think back about that, how would you describe, because you're starting with time attendance and with a bit of, let's say, job costing or work recording, what is the different milestones that you think that the company has gone through since then up until where you guys are now?
I think if I start in the beginning, what we actually started with, especially in the hardware side, and that's actually where we had a big challenge. We started off with readers, and I think Piet was still involved when we originally developed it with a guy called Ricky. I can't even remember Ricky's surname. And that was RFID readers that Ricky built in Johannesburg. And then to get him to make that stuff fast enough for us was a challenge. No? And that was also not, you had to install a solution on site. It was an on-site solution that you had to install. And if you battled with clocking pieces and getting the devices to sync. And we actually were looking for a hardware supplier that could have supplied us. And then the initial thought was to develop our own controller and our own readers. And I've appointed a guy by the name of Piet Strydom, you know Piet. And we took a drive and we started from different companies.
Yes.
We developed a controller, I still have it. It cost us $500,000 at that stage.
Goodness. And that's a lot of
money that we took out to develop, I think. We still have it. I still have it. It never worked, but I still have it.
It's part of the history.
And then we actually drove, I think we saw a client in, where was that? It was a mine. We came back from a mine and we actually drove past ZK.
Okay.
Still in your old ZK office.
In Artis, yes.
And Piet said, but he knows Hendrik. I said,
yeah.
Why don't we go and chat to Hendrik? And we actually drove in there.
Yes.
I'll never forget that. That's many years ago. And that is where we actually started getting some of the hardware. We bought a couple of devices. And then we had a chat with our technical team, which we're quite strong at that stage. I think my technical team is one of the strongest in the country, if I take the skills that I have.
Yes.
And Armand, if I can call him Armand, he took that thing by heart, and we spent many hours, many days burning sunlight. I call it sunlight. We're going from daylight to darkness, many hours, and we've managed to do that integration successfully at that stage.
Yeah.
And we're continuously developing that to our own platform now, as you know.
When did you have the transition from on-premises to a cloud version?
It was about 2017.
Okay.
We had our first hosted solution, whereby we could host it successfully and work through the integration, get the devices. That was, I think it was the F17, F16s, and then the S922s. And some of those S922s are still in operation today.
Still alive.
They're still alive and they're still kicking well. And then we actually started off with where is the solution going? How do we foresee it going?
Yeah.
We've been adding value every month to that solution, and our customers give us a lot of ideas, a lot of inspiration. I've got continuous calls with them on a monthly where we have sessions. How can we improve the software? How we can add value? And we've now developed the full-blown workforce management solution. I think.
Yes.
I don't want to go into too much of the modules.
Yeah.
But the newest enhancement is our hosted advanced access control, hosted anti-passback, sequential clocking, time zones, all of it.
Everything from a web server.
From a web server.
Okay.
That device talks directly to the web server.
Yes.
If you can't have connectivity, if you have access to the device, we'll still allow you.
Of course.
But then it will register a violation if you shouldn't have gone in there. Otherwise, it will block you at the gate.
Exactly.
You can't enter.
Yeah, I think that probably comes back to the adaptability of Netrec to be able to be almost anything for any client, because you guys do bend backwards when it comes down to projects as well.
It's if the bigger type of client, yes. The smaller type,
Yeah, no, obviously you need to
always, yeah,
test. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. And I always say, if a client requests something we haven't done, not that we can do it, we just haven't done it yet.
Of course.
If he's preparing to pay for it,
Yeah.
I've got a team of developers
Yes.
that I can put onto it, especially if it's going to add value. And our motto as well is, if it adds value to the product, I will discount the development by 50%,
Yes.
depending on how much value it will add. If it's something that I can resell onto new customers,
Yes.
or I can take it back to my existing customers, then I discount the development outright. But the ownership then stays still with Netrec.
Of course.
It becomes a new product.
Tell me, you now come from an advanced background of DCD and how their operations and everything worked. How would you say the needs of the end user changed since then up until now? Is there new questions coming up? Is there new innovations that needs to be done for the newer type of business today than what it is, or is it still the same basic business principles?
As with anything, I think it evolved. The need to have information available faster, definitely there, to have analytics on the data, identify alerts if something goes wrong. That changed dramatically because we didn't have the capability, or there was no need for it at that stage. But I think the whole business will change where information is freely available, and the guys want the information at their fingertips. They want alerts, they want dashboards, stuff like that, and that is. We focused highly on that, especially in, I think, the last 2 or 3 years. And there's still going to be focus. We still have some nice ideas and stuff that we continue with.
Do you think, it's one thing that I ask almost in each one of these episodes is the younger generation that's coming through, can you guys see some of the needs and stuff need to be catered for them? I call it the one button brigade, where they want one button to be pushed and they want to see everything. Can you guys see that type of evolution in some of your end user businesses as well?
Definitely. They will challenge us, especially our mobility is good with the mobile the device and stuff. We've developed the app, and also now we're adding the face recognition to it. But again, they want that device to talk to them. They want the device to send them alerts and stuff like that. At their fingertips. They don't necessarily want to go approve the hours, but just give them the exceptions. They just look at it and press one button and everything must happen. So yeah, definitely, it is there. But with the younger generation also comes a bit of challenges, especially skills-wise. I've had quite a number of youngsters coming through the company, especially in the last 5 or 6 years, coming out of university, and life owes them something. No?
Yes.
They want to get a pocket full of money, and then Netrec spent 2 or 3 years to get the skills up to where they're adding value. And just when they're adding value, they decide they can do something better. So I'm very, very wary of the youngsters these days. I'd rather take somebody who's got 5 or 6 years experience and teach them, rather invest in them, because you get a guy that works 6 months and then he decides he can get something
Definitely, new. But I think obviously that happens with each generation coming up, and there's always that thing of, the young generation is not, it's unemployable. They are lazy and they do this. But I mean, everybody was saying that about us as well, with our generation, because you're watching TV and you're doing this the whole day and that type of thing. I mean, it happens with all of the generations, but at the end of the day, it's part of the life cycle. We need to go on, and we need to be able to cater for those guys as well in this market. So I think the challenges will become a bit more whereby different innovations need to come up faster, because now the new generation wants everything to happen overnight, and everything needs to happen right now, and the attention span is right now. So obviously then the development of software, the development of the apps and the hardware needs to change as well, which is obviously our main point.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think we can see it with an interaction with other software systems, especially payroll and human capital systems. And we've been quite fortunate with our API platform. We can integrate with any one of the providers out there. You can see when my team talks to another team, some of them youngsters, they don't always understand.
Yes.
But you do get a couple of clients with their software that will challenge you. And I always see a challenge not as an obstacle. It is something that we can learn out of. And with my technical team, Armand and his team, they are actually pretty good at getting the knowledge, sharing the knowledge. And we actually learn a lot, not only from providing a service to the end customer, but also through partnerships with other software providers.
Of course, yeah.
I think we created we just launched now seamless integration with Greatsoft Payroll.
Yes.
So that's one of we've been partners for a pretty long time, but now it is technically one solution.
Yes.
You don't have to do anything. If you press a button for the hours, it's in the payroll automatically.
It's again that need from the market side. They need one system. They don't want to go from this system to that system to that system.
Yeah, they don't want to jump around. They want to see one solution, and their solution is time and attendance and payroll and human capital all in one under one umbrella. And we actually proud ourselves through the API to physically be able to do that for the end customer.
Yes.
Because we're adding value at the end to the customer.
Of course, yeah. Tell me about the evolution of dashboards in a software. I know it's something that a lot of people are talking about, but I know you guys have done quite a lot of interactive dashboards and that type of thing. How did that come about in your software? From people that's looking at real-time information, or how did that come from?
Yeah, I think one of the first things we actually did is the device monitoring. The device monitoring tool is, we've got a live dashboard monitoring all the devices in your current environment. And that tells us immediately if a device goes offline. It tells us when was the last time it syncs transactions. That was the first need that came up. And that was for a client down in Cape Town that asked the question. He just asked the question, you would like to see this on a dashboard. You would like to display it. And especially engineering companies and the processing companies, they want to see who is on site, who is late, stuff like that. And some of our clients have got big TVs up in the factories or the processing on the floor. They can automatically go and see, oh, this guy should have pitched for shift, he's not here. There's shift counts of late arrivals and early type. And they actually forced us to have a look at something, at a tool which will enable them to physically see it. And we don't necessarily want to create something for one customer. So we said as a team, how do we do this? What do we do? So we actually developed the dashboards to be fully customizable. If we have the information, or we can get to the information, if most of the clients got a SQL database where they store the information in, through our API, we can actually pull that information out of their system, ERP, payroll, whatever. We can actually display it on our dashboard within our solution to the client. Inside the factory, on his laptop, on his phone, we can display such things to him. So that was a whole evolution. Started, I would say, around about 2020. There was a big drive to get that ready. And yes, we've developed a lot of software around about that. What actually added more value for us was the Excel reporting could do, Excel to PDF, Word. We can do almost all the reporting in different zones.
Because the need of the different clients, this guy wants PDF, that guy wants Excel.
And Excel is a powerful tool if you use it right. So we populate, you create a template, we populate data sheet, we can build graphs and all our fancy stuff for you. That thing runs automatically. If you want it 8 o'clock every morning, you will have that report 8 o'clock every morning. If you want to alert, how many hours did your employee work through the week? When did he reach its target? When is the scheduling? Through cell phones, SMS, stuff like that, we share that with the end user and with the client.
And I think obviously with process management and the type of clients that you guys are working with, like you said, it's extremely important to know immediately or the whole time what is going on your shop floor.
And to have the software available 24/7, you can get up at night. I'm an early riser, get up at 2 o'clock. We're busy with a big client, for instance. I can go into to his environment, check his device status, how many people is on site. I've take snapshots of it and send it to the manager before he actually gets to work and telling him, look, this guy was working around midnight. or they played around.
Yes.
We have a lot on the hardware, especially the turnstiles and boom gates and stuff like that as well, fully integrated.
Yes.
Also our cameras and stuff like that as well, also in the solution through the access control module. And it is, you decide when access must be granted.
Yes.
So the system will auto-terminate it, will take his access away, will grant him access according to shift patterns and stuff like that. So
Of course, yeah.
it becomes nice.
Yeah, because I think this evolution goes from depending on the needs of the clients, and that is how your evolution goes on to the software and the hardware as well, which you have to add the whole time. Otherwise, you're going to stay behind. Otherwise, other people are going to start doing it, and you don't even have the time to do it for the whole client.
And sometimes you have to listen.
Yes.
If the client has got a need, listen to what the need is, understand the problem, and if you can't solve it, solve it.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I haven't touched on in any of the episodes is obviously this also causes that your service levels need to be also evolving with the different needs of the clients.
That is important. Now, technically, we are extremely strong. On the support side, we're just as strong. We've got a diverse team of employees or colleagues. I can call them colleagues. So some people call employees, I call them colleagues.
Of course, yeah.
But we're very, very strong in that instance. We've got a help desk, 24/7 help desk, where there's a rotation. So the employees rotate between who's after our support.
Yes.
With also fancy digital interactive whiteboard that I actually bought from you. That's in the support office, quite a big one.
Yeah.
Shows the tickets that will come in. It is allocated randomly, and that is the way we actually transfer knowledge from one client to another one, especially with the support people. Because you normally have a team that does the implementation.
Yes.
They came back, they give it over to the support. When they're not busy, they will also attend to support, and then we have to transfer knowledge and
Yes.
SOPs. But through that, we support is just as strong as the technical.
Exactly, yeah. And I think with the support side, with the evolution that needs to go into that as well, is just, I don't think people understand how service intensive time and workforce management systems are. Because if you touch people's salaries and the time that they're working, that's a very sensitive area.
I don't like phone calls 11, 12 o'clock at night.
Exactly.
I can't access the site because the devices doesn't work.
Yep.
Or no, I can't see the dashboard, or can't see the hours. I don't know who's late, who's not. And in today, especially with the clients, we actually under our umbrella, some of them also work 24/7. Different shift patterns. So you will get a call at 12 o'clock tonight saying, I can't access this, I don't know how to do that. It goes through the help desk automatically with a service level, because we assigned a service agreement, and we've got targets that we have to meet. So if the service says we have to reply within an hour and it has to be resolved within 4, unfortunately, that's why you sign the contract, and you have to stay with that contract.
Yeah. So the other thing that I also want to touch on is obviously business is business and the system is systems, but at the end of the day, the relationship with your end user is obviously very, very important to keep that relationship. And I mean, obviously from our side to your side, to the end user, that whole relationship chain is very important for you guys.
Definitely. We don't supply software. We're a solution partner. So we provide a solution to the client through software, but also through our expertise.
Yes.
So we will discuss it with the client. We see something that we feel the client can do better.
Yeah.
It's easy. And like me and you chat, I have a chat with the client, telling him, why don't you have a look at that? Or why don't you have a look at maybe doing it this way?
Yes.
It is not always, you can't, a time and attendance system is time and attendance system. There's a start time and an end time.
Exactly.
But there's a lot of rules. How do you pay people? And payment is different. And there's a lot of ways we can actually improve on it. Our software is not perfect. Nothing in life is perfect.
No, of course, yes.
We strive to have it as perfect as possible.
Yes.
But we're continuously adding value, and we are listening and we're learning. I think I'm about the oldest there. I think the accountant is older, financial manager is older.
Yes.
But the rest of the team is still young.
Exactly.
Our early 30s, still full of energy, full of work to come.
Yes. Tell me then, There's a few questions on AI that is always coming up now. What do you think, if any, if there is any use cases at the moment in workforce management for AI, and if not, where do you think AI can fit in workforce management?
I think there's definitely a place for AI. If you look at resolving an issue, if you can have like a ChatGPT in your software AI tool that can quickly go and get you some use cases, how do you solve this typically?
Yes.
And also identifying patterns and behavioral patterns and stuff like that. So there's definitely place for it. I think to physically evolve in it, it's still going to be a phase approach, and
Yes.
we're still going to have to see how we're going to do it. But that is something that is on our roadmap to in any way implement in the software, to identify, to see where, how we can assist the end customer,
Yes.
identify rules, rule breakers, stuff like that. You can do a lot of reporting and dashboarding, but it is also, most of it is after effect. You have to, if you want to predict patterns and stuff like that, you need analytics, and I think the analytics coupled with AI, that will add tremendous value.
Yes.
So definitely there is value in looking and investing in AI, especially in time and attendance.
Yeah. And the other thing that I also mention on every episode, obviously, all of us, we create data. And at the end of the day, something must be done with that data.
Yeah.
And I think probably that is where AI will play a very big role with this, everybody talking about the big data previously. Now we've got the data, what are we going to do about it?
Yeah. So one thing having data is another thing understanding the data and what does the data tell you.
Exactly, yeah.
And then that is where I believe AI's biggest influence will be, is actually helping you analyzing the data.
Management reporting. Obviously, management reporting, live data, that type of thing, also kind of came alive a few years ago. Can you elaborate a bit on management reporting to top brass and that type of thing? What type of role does that play in today's workforce management?
I think availability of information plays a big role, and we believe time and attendance has got two faults to it. Something that already happened, because then we have to pay that individual, and there's a lot of emphasis around about the approval of hours and overtime and stuff like that. But then you also have forecasting. What is it going to be like? What is it going to look like? What is it going to cost like? And to have the ability to actually generate that to them. What was my absenteeism? What was the leave like? What was my sick leave like? To report on absenteeism and absenteeism trends, because we can generate based on the data we have. We can predict what is my absenteeism going to be for the next 6 months. What does it look like over the December? We've got one of my long-standing clients actually have a dashboard, a yearly dashboard, and they actually measure month for month.
Okay.
And I think it's now about 7 years they do that, and you will actually be surprised of the absenteeism, how it actually increases towards December, especially if you don't have leave. If you go to that period, you will see absenteeism increase, sick leave. So there is the availability of information in certain formats, especially for management. That's a great tool to have, and that's something that adds value to the business at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think that also adds the humanity of these end users into that, showing the people, listen, these are people, literally people that you're working with. It's not robots. It's something that is predictable and can be worked with in the future. And actually having those trends over 7 years, like you say, from one of our clients, that brings in that humanity into this business as well.
Definitely. We've got some of the clients we actually learned a lot from. If you think you know everything, making big mistake. We're continuously learning. Client will push you for information, and you say, but why does he need the information? And having conversation with him, understanding what he want to use it for, you actually say, yes, this is actually a nice management tool of reporting how many employees is on shift, how many is early, how many is late, how many should have been here, it's not there, how many pitch up without them supposed to be here. Stuff like that adds value. And we also learn, I think, and also through the configuration of setting up a system. The bigger your client is, the longer it takes you to get to that stage. Once you're at that stage, the thing runs smoothly. But to get there, small ones is easy. Start in the morning, midday, 12 o'clock, you finish. If you get 10,000 employee site, it changes a bit. It takes you 3 to 4 to 6 months to get it rolled out, get it working.
You have to tweak it the whole time.
You have to tweak it the whole time. And client gives you the rules. This is the rules.
Yep.
Those rules are not always rules. No. You've
Yeah,
got rules, then you have exceptions, and then you've got exceptions on those exceptions, and then
Exactly.
you sometimes have exceptions on those exceptions. But we're used to it. I think after the journey we had,
Of course.
I always say the new client can't be worse off than the previous one, and I've always been surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, like I said previously as well, is the evolution of the needs of the clients.
Yeah.
And in the different industries. And we're talking about bargaining councils that's playing a very big role these days. And you've got different layers in your different clients, whereby they've got some temporary employees coming in from a different bargaining council working for them now. How do you handle that? And obviously the flexibility needs to be there.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think with the client, sometimes you'll find that there's a bargaining council, there's rules, but now he's got a special a written agreement that
Yes.
he can bypass some of it. So you have to cater for it. You must have the ability to cater for it.
Then the last two questions, always a bit more personal. Your personal opinion on, if I always bring it up and say we need to have new blood into this market. If you can give any advice to young people or startups or anybody who want to get into this market, because we need new companies, we need even new competitors. It's something that drives your own company also to newer heights. What is that advice that you will give the younger generation at this stage, how to get into this market? That's obviously now workforce management, but obviously there's access control, all of that also inclusive.
I think, as you said, all of us start our journey in a different way. My journey started from the wrong side of, it didn't have anything to do with IT where we are today. Keep it simple. Start with something simple that you can control, and then build yourself and dream.
Yes.
But don't look up at the sky if your feet are not on the ground. Stay grounded. Start off simple. Start with something that you can easily understand, that you can CV security,
Yes.
biotime. Start with something that's there already that you can take to a small client, you can assist that client. And you're not going to make money from day one. It's unfortunately, it doesn't work that way.
It's not going to happen overnight.
No, definitely not. So I would say keep it simple. Start off simple and then build it going forward. No?
What would you tell your own 20-year-old that time of stuff that you know now? What is the advice that you will give? Or that 18-year-old that just came out of school, didn't know what to do or what to do. What advice would you give yourself today?
Hard work does pay off, but you must want to put the work into it to get it. No? My oldest son, he's also joined Netric about, I think, 2 years ago. After he finished his degree, he's actually busy with another degree part-time. And luckily, he's got his work ethics he got from me, so he's putting in the hard work at the stage. So anything, if you want to make a success of something, you have to want to put in the work. And I think that's something that also we can't do what we need to do without sacrificing something. And sometimes our personal lives get sacrificed, especially the wife and the kids. You always try. I tell the guys, you have to keep a work-life balance. And it doesn't work.
Sometimes that does not exist.
It doesn't work if you're the boss. And we are still very much involved. We are actually, I'm not somebody that sits backwards and do my teamwork. I will work just as hard, maybe harder than some of them. But so the family is also important. And I always tell the guys, you're entitled to take leave. Take leave. You're entitled to when you're sick, you're sick. Don't come to work when you're sick. You can make everybody sick. You're entitled to it. Just don't abuse it. I don't like abuse. I always believe honest days work for honest days pay. If you come to work, you must be focused. I think with the ladies, it's not always that case.
You never know, eh?
Yeah, you never know. But stay focused.
Well, on that high note, I think we'll finish our Christmas special. And Merry Christmas to everybody out there, and Merry Christmas to you and your team, Thomas.
Thank you.
I hope everybody will travel safely get back to us next year, and let's hit the new year running. But thank you very much for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.